Well, hello.
Hey, hello everyone. Welcome to another OSR Tabletop live stream with myself, DM Bloodworth, and today I have Shonner on, and the topic it was kind of an impromptu topic because I've been waiting to dig into Shonner's role playing the hard way, and I've been trying to kind of piece it together in my own mind to kind of know where he's coming from as far as how it actually works. So in my last video, when I went through it kind of point by point, I had some questions, and so Sean agreed to come on and hopefully clarify some of those questions, or at least answer them for me. I will take questions from people in the comments section as well. Just remember to keep them respectful as always, and hopefully constructive as far as trying to trying to find some common ground on these various things, because I will say I agree a lot with what Shonner says, but there are still some things that I think are, I don't know, I guess I would say you're on the, yeah, this is how I'll put it. I'm going to say that my initial view is that you're coming from the role playing perspective and how to game from the opposite side of the coin or spectrum of like the OSR is with running a game absolutely raw. All right, so rules is written, and I think that those are the two far extremes that I see. But anyway, I'll let you come in, because I know you took some notes on my video to point out a couple things that I was struggling with, let's say.
Well, you mentioned immersion, and I did a search. In my PDF, and the word immersion is not even in the rules. It's not even in the book. I probably did that on purpose, because immersion is a toxic word these days. And the minute people read immersion, they're like, "Oh, what is this nonsense?" Storytelling crap, and they won't read the book. But I notice a lot of people, they download the book, they can't even get past the social contract, which is just a sample contract from like 10 years ago.
Right.
And it's a system shock for most people when they see a social contract, especially one that a group might use.
But to me, like my understanding of it, and when I was reading through your document, it's the one thing that I was like, but even though you don't mention immersion, though, you can't really role play without it. I think that you have to be in your character, in the moment of the scene. Like everything you describe is describing immersion without the word immersion attached to it. And it's saying it's almost like trying to deal with the dice mechanics without a target number. If you don't describe it as a target number, it becomes hard for people to understand where it's really going with. And I think immersion's the same thing.
Yeah, I wanted the person reading to figure out on their own what immersion could possibly mean, because you can't role play without immersion. I mean, if you role play, the minute you role play, the second you start role playing, you're immersed. And if you're one of those people that says, "Oh, you can't get immersed in a tabletop role playing," people have brain damage in my book. The thing you mentioned though about the target number, I'm glad you asked, because I may have to better describe that or clarify more, but that's why I got a couple more books in the making, one for the players and one for the runner. And It's going to go more in depth.
Okay.
This is just a free introduction, tongue-in-cheek thing I threw together, calling it the hard way, just to scare off people, because people already think that role-playing's hard. So why make it easier for them by making the book easy, having an easy title? But if you read the book, you find out, oh, this is like super easy to do. It's just a matter of players want to role play or not.
Right.
It's there.
Yeah, I'm getting a little breakup on your end.
What kind? What kind?
I
Am I too loud?
your image is breaking up a little bit. It's a little sputtery. So I don't know if you're having an
Oh,
internet bubble
I
or
don't know. I don't know. My hard drive's not doing anything right now. There's no
yeah.
Windows update.
Is anyone else kind of seeing that, or maybe it's just on my end that I'm seeing it? So if anybody else is noticing the little glitchiness,
Make
just
my screen
throw it in.
small.
One of the many reasons all right, let's see. So we got Solo RPG. Hey, Solo, how's it going? And he says, one of the many reasons I go solo is most people destroy the immersion I try to create. I call them verisimilitude killers. I hate that word. I can't say that freaking word to
Yeah,
save my life.
that's
Um,
another toxic word. I
yeah.
avoid that word.
So yeah, so there is a little bit of the like a breakiness. We'll see if it clears up. It could be a solar flare. It's like
Who knows?
yeah, who knows?
Because you're coming in perfect on my end.
Yeah, yeah, you're just breaking up a little bit on mine. It must be that what are you in California, right?
Yeah,
So it must
but
be all the natural disasters that happen in California. So,
I got this other thing. How do players state the roles they made?
yeah,
Okay,
yeah. So yeah, so like
I'm using effects. I'm using the effects from Mongoose Traveler.
all right.
There's degrees of success. After you roll the dice, you get a success of some sort. Marginal, critical, exceptional,
Okay.
that kind of thing.
Yeah, so they don't actually get into the numbers. You know what? It's very similar to which I was breaking down before I got this. James Bond does it gives you wound levels, so it'll say light wound, medium wound, serious wound, incapacitating wound, and kill. And you can describe the hits verbally based just on that without actually getting into the numbers, of saying it. But I just watched your video of um level 3 to whatever it was, his video, and I certainly agree with you. I mean,
Was it the player one or was it the DM
no,
one?
no, it was the DM one when he was showing the different players, like he was posing
Okay.
as different players at his table. The most recent one you just put up, and he does say the numbers, like, and I guess that's a bit of a sacrifice. I guess he's making in order to still, you know, you still gotta, you still have to show the game mechanics in some way. And and you certainly didn't respond to it like, oh, he's out of character here by saying I rolled an 8. You know, do you think that's necessary? Like sometimes like you have to say what the role is.
Yeah, you have to.
Right.
Sometimes you just have to rely on a number. What do they call that? You're going into the micro of it. You're
Hmm.
going into the like the operating system almost when you start talking about the numbers.
Okay. Yeah.
Instead of talking about the text, the
Hmm.
story part, you're going into the mechanics.
Right.
Um,
So you don't
and
consider that talking out of character though.
well, I want. Well, let's back up a bit. When the players are making their roll, all they have is a difficulty level.
Hmm.
Now, in their mind, they know the mechanics of the game, so they know what number they have to roll equal or above.
Right.
When I say the difficulty level, I don't say difficulty number. I say difficulty level. Like this is
Right.
hard. This is formidable, impossible. That kind of thing. The players, when they do their rolls, I don't tell them. Oh, use a strength with a certain skill you have, like acrobatics or Use a unarmed melee, natural weapon plus advantage, and all that kind of stuff. I don't I don't tell them what roll to make. I just tell them the difficulty. The players then know, because they know the game mechanic. They can know from role play. They role played just a second before what their character was doing.
Right.
I'm gonna use strength against knocking this door. I'm gonna I press hard against something, or I push the guy aside as hard as I can, or I throw the grenade as far. They're telling me basically they're gonna either do a strength or acrobatic or agility or dexterity, whatever's on their character
Mhm.
sheet, and then they're gonna add their own skill and modifiers. I'm not gonna ask them to do all that stuff. They're grown
Right.
people. They know what their character can and can't do. They know what roles to make. I never tell the players, oh, that's going to be a dexterity, and then use your such and such modifier. I'm not going to oh, you have a scope on that gun, okay. No, the players do all that for themselves. All I want to hear back from the player after their roll is the effect of the roll. All I want to hear back from them is, well, after an hour of doing this, my success is just marginal, it looks like,
Mhm.
or it was exceptional success, eureka, I'm able to do the thing, and da da da, you know. So they kind of explain from their results what the success was or the failure was, depending on if we agree beforehand who gets to narrate the successes and who gets to narrate the failures.
Yeah.
Because
Well, I know
we'll flip
in your
flop.
book you actually said the player narrates their success, and then the game master or the runner will explain
Yeah.
the failures. Basically, which makes
Now,
sense actually.
now if the players are doing something on their own and we haven't, the difficulty level hasn't been brought up yet at all for a task, and I don't know the difficulty yet until I think about it first. While they're rolling, I'll think of a difficulty, and if they don't know if I haven't, if we don't know the difficulty, the players just tell me what number they rolled.
Right, and then
Like
you'll tell them at that point.
the player will say I rolled a 7,
Mm.
and then I tell them uh, the good or the bad, and from that they can kind of tell how well or how badly they succeeded at something without
Yeah.
really knowing what the difficulty was. I think in the book I mentioned something about a safe, opening a safe, but you don't know if you set off an silent alarm somewhere.
Oh, right. Yeah. And I took that actually in my video. I actually brought up that issue with like hidden difficulty levels. And so, when the player rolls their die to see if they were successful unlocking the lock, let's say. Um and but you have the hidden difficulty level. So they start rolling and then they start narrating because they think they succeeded. They know what their skill is. They think they succeeded. And then that's when the runner will step in and say, "Yeah, you heard that? You heard the tumblers clicking and clicking, and then all of a sudden it just didn't go all the way through because they didn't realize that they actually failed. They thought they succeeded. And so you
Yeah,
narratively explain, no, you actually failed. You know, it was close, but not quite. And then they go on from there. And that's what I thought the passage on hidden difficulties really didn't handle, like, when how does it deal with, or how would you deal with a player who thinks they succeeded? Do you have them start doing their narrative and then you come in, like they're narrating their success but they actually failed, and then do you step in and then
oh no, 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 I okay, what I'll do is I'll just say what the effect is
Mhm.
of their roll. Instead of them telling me the effect of their roll, I'm telling them the effect of their roll.
Okay, all right, so
And
then
then, and I'll say it real quick. They say their thing real quick, so we're not breaking up role play.
Okay. All right. Yeah.
Like they'll just say, I'll just say,
Yeah.
uh, exceptional success.
Hmm.
That's all. I don't even mention what the difficulty was,
Okay.
and then they narrate what they want to do about that.
Yeah. All right. All right. That
And
makes.
if we're dealing with numbers, the player will just say 14, or they'll say 12, or 2. They say the number quick, and we're still in character. And we do the narration. We don't fuss around with. I rolled. Let's see, 3 and a 7 plus my thing. We don't do that.
Yeah, I was thinking of ways, and I've been trying to do this in my game because I can see all the rolls. All right, because they're doing it on the virtual tabletop, so I see the rolls in the chat box. And I was like, I know exactly. And sometimes like a roll 20 even will highlight a successful roll, so I know right away. Oh, it's circled in green. It's a success. It'll give me all those details, so they never really have to mention whether it was successful or not. The one thing that I want them to start doing, because I know that we spend more time on it, would really streamline things, is if roll 20 automatically, and sometimes it automatically rolls the die for damage attacks as well, like weapon attacks. It doesn't do it for spells, but it does it for weapon attacks. So actually, you're seeing the result of the attack, the roll, and you're seeing the damage automatically. And so you never have to mention it. You're just, I just see it. And then the player, the only time I have the players really describe or narrate the effect is if it's a critical effect, a critical hit, or I will narrate their critical failures as well. So yeah, I just try to get the numbers out of the conversation as much as possible, because we see the numbers anyway, but it's very visible. I don't know, like if you're playing, I guess you're running your games online, correct?
Yeah, we use StreamYard. We
All
used to
right.
use Hangouts, but now we use StreamYard, and we're just using real dice on our
All right.
desks.
Yeah.
And for damage, depending on the success or not, the player just knows what their weapon can do or what their
Right.
fists can do, and they
Yeah.
roll, and then they just tell me the number for damage.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Like I
And
thought
then
you were
and then
trying
and
to.
then I'll just tick off some things on my sheet for my character for damage, or they'll do the same on their character sheet, and then we role play. Oh, character can't walk, limping around the hallways,
Mhm.
unable to breathe, that kind of thing. Blood coming out of their nose and
Yeah.
eyeballs and ears and things.
Right.
As because we're playing travelers, so
Yeah.
there's no. I mean, technically there's hit points, but you're the hit point.
Yeah. Yeah. No,
There's
I
no there's
understand. Yeah.
there's
Yeah.
there's no layer. There's no buffer between you and the bullets hitting you. You're getting hit.
Yeah. All right, so Pieter puts in here, was watching a video the other day. Apparently, rules is written Moldve BX. The DM rolls all the damage rolls and narrates the result. Really? That's interesting. Where the DM rolls the damage rolls. Um, I still do those in full view though. I mean, so my players see my rolls, when I'm, especially combat rolls. The only thing my players don't see is when I do surprise rolls, um, but or random encounter rolls and those kinds of things. But anything combat related, they see. They see when I'm rolling it. But for me to roll their damage, I would never do that. Um, that's kind of
Let's say let's
weird.
say you do
It's
roll their
adding,
damage.
yeah.
How do you tell the player how they got damaged?
Well, they'll see it. Oh no, they see it. Like I said, my all of my rolls are
Oh, you mean
visible.
like they're rolling not behind a GM screen or
Oh no, I
something?
don't roll behind a GM. Well, I mean, I'm playing virtually, so there is no GM screen, but there's no. That's why I do all the rolls publicly, so they see it. Well,
Well,
and
that makes sense. That makes
yeah.
sense if the players can see a number so they know how much hit points to mark
Yeah,
off.
how much hit points they mark off, and they'll see my attack roll, so they see right away. Oh, crap! I just rolled a 20. All right, so they know. Oh shit! He's gonna go to the he's gonna go to the critical hit chart now, and the critical hit chart is really scary as hell.
Yeah.
I use the one out of Castles and Crusades, but there's another one actually in Old Dragon magazine. I have to find, I have to find that one. And see how that compares to it. But I had one player that was like, I don't like using this table at all. He says there's a 10% chance you die on a critical failure, and I was like, yeah, I mean that's what it is, but it's just it's just a chance that it is there. So they see it. So they see the roll. They know I'm not fudging rolls, and I think that's really important is that they see that all the rolls are straight up and um it's fair on both sides of it. So I think that's important.
Yeah,
Um
I don't worry about characters or players cheating because we're there to role play no
mm,
matter what's going on in the game.
yeah, I know, and you said that
And,
too. You said if you can't trust your players, they should be at your table. So I read that,
yeah.
or you made that comment someplace on the you
I'd
know
probably say that once a week on my channel.
yeah. Yeah, so and that's true. I mean, if you can't trust, especially when they're rolling in like if they're in person and you can't trust their rolls, it's like that's pretty ballsy, to screw around with your rolls. I mean, that was one of the reasons why, talking about Critical Role, that was one of the reasons why they kicked that one guy off in the first season or near the end of the first season. Was he literally was rolling in person and lying about his rolls, and the other players were looking straight at him like, you didn't roll that, and that's why he was kicked off. Or one of the reasons why he was kicked off.
One of the reasons.
Yeah, because he was cheating, and he probably didn't get along with people. So, that's the other thing. He didn't get along with Mercer's wife. So that's pretty much you're finished there right to begin with. Um, so player attacks a zombie with a mace, rolls a 17. DM, you hit the zombie with your mace. DM rolls a 1 damage. The mace makes contact glancing off this zombie's shoulder. Yeah, I mean, yes, you can narrate it. You can narrate it that way, so but you see the rolls, you don't have to say the rolls. Um,
Yeah,
and
I use
mm,
hit points in D&D basically
mm,
as stamina. So when your hit points run out, you're just exhausted. You can't even move.
okay, the DM rolls it. All right. Yeah, you can talk about the severity if you have. And this was one of the things I was when I was reading through yours, I was thinking, I was like, wait a second, because you say you can't role play D&D, and I was really getting tied around the fact that, that you meant that if you have to mention numbers, you're not role playing, you're kind of stepping out of character to mention numbers. And then I started looking at it and I was like, well, wait a second, it depends on the edition of D&D. If you go to the older editions of D&D, like every weapon does D6 damage. So you can come up with a descriptive word that will tell you whether it's a 1 through 6, just by describing it, a glance, you know, uh, a slight hit, a normal hit or a medium hit, a heavy hit, or a critical hit. You could just use those terms and then the player will know after some practice.
You
Um,
know,
it also has very simple to hit charts, so it's very easy for the player to memorize, what they actually need to hit, or it's just one little tiny chart. They have that on their character sheet, and they could see right away. All right, well, I would hit this armor class, and then if they train themselves, hey, I know that I know an orc with the chainmail armor and a shield, is AC4. All right, because I know what the chainmail is, I know what this. So if I know I hit an AC4, I don't have to ask, did I hit? I don't have to look at the chart. I just roll it and I know it hit. It's the charts referencing to hit charts in particular, that I think you run into the problem of having to break from character to look up rules. It's with the
Yeah.
yeah, it's more with the
You can't
modern
have
day
charts.
D&D. Yeah, you can't have charts. You need target numbers. That way you kind of know, and
You need
difficulty
unified
levels, and
die rolls.
yeah, and then same thing with saving throws. You should have
You got
one
to throw those
universal
away.
saving throw.
Yeah, throw away the
Um,
saving throws.
and I know you talk about throwing away another thing, and that's initiative uh
Combat round.
and combat round. So when
You don't
I'm
need
looking,
those.
yeah, when I'm looking at it though, I mean, I know some people run their games where they say the player characters always win initiative. And I have an issue with that concept because there have been many, many times in my current game where if the players lose initiative that round, it could really change the whole combat. Um, so it's like, because they're on the verge of losing, a player character or two, and the opposing side is in an equal situation. So it's like, oh, you need to roll, this. Now, what I will do, which I think is a little bit more in line with what you're talking about, the common sense aspect of it, is the player character that is closest to the action, that's the one that rolls initiative. You know, and
Yeah,
so it
if the players are role playing, you don't need combat rounds or initiative.
well
If the
again
players are role playing.
it
If they're
depends
playing a board
on the
game, then you probably need all those things.
well, it depends on the game mechanics though, because there are certain aspects of the game mechanics, and I agreed with you again. I talked about it in my thing. If it makes more sense that the fighter who spoke first, right? So the fighter spoke first before the archer, before the mage, right? Because
Okay.
in D&D and in most fantasy role playing games, the combat sequence goes missile, magic, melee. All right.
Yeah,
That's the order it goes in. But
but you're
using what
using the
you said,
combat. Are you using a turn or a combat turn? There's a difference. In a turn, players just say in any
right?
order they
No,
want where they're at and what they're doing.
in a combat turn, there's
But in a
also a
combat turn,
sequence.
it's like, oh, now we're stuck. We're stuck in a sequence.
Well, and this is where I agreed with you. And what I said in that video was that what he's saying about the sequence, and you could break from the sequence if it makes sense, and if that character, the player really responded first,
No, I use cinematic mode. I've watched the D&D cartoon. I don't think there's any combat rounds in the D&D cartoon during their combats, and their combats are short and sweet, just like in cinematic mode. Real time. My
Mhm.
combat's in real time, not game time. I mean, I can see people playing a simple combat and it takes 2 hours to do in a YouTube video.
Right.
I
Yeah,
want if a 2 minute long combat thing's going to happen, I want it to happen no more than 5 minutes in my game.
right. I know you mentioned how long does a bar fight actually take?
Or how long does a tavern scene take? How long
Well,
does a scene in a tavern in a movie take, whether there's combat or not?
yeah.
Just
So
people eating, drinking, socializing the next day. It's not 2 hours we're going to be yapping in this tavern, talking
so
to some mysterious
yeah.
stranger.
So how is role playing and improv different? I'll take
Well,
this question here, and how is it
improv is
different?
improv is when you're trying to be funny on stage, making up stuff on the fly.
Well, let's take the comedy aspect out of it, because I'm sure that you have improv that is not. It's situational improv, not comedic improv.
Well, your character has a goal, has motives. So when it's your turn, your character's going to do what your character's going to do, character driven.
Okay. Yeah, so it's character-driven character, and that was the one thing that I took from your, role play the hard way. And it's actually something that, you know, I to a certain extent I started doing that with the character knowledge base. And I said, no, no, there's a clear separation between what the character knows and what the player knows. The player is almost always going to know more than the character. All right. And so, how do I decipher those two things out? How do I separate them? Well, I separate them by kind of knowing what that character has already experienced, and the player should know about that too. And the first time it really came up was one of my players tried to use speak with animals with a were rat. And he says, I'm casting speak with animals so I can talk to this were rat. And I let him cast a spell. And I told him it didn't work. And he was like, wait, what do you mean it didn't work? He was like, how did it not work? He says, he's a were rat. He's in rat form. I says, number one, were rat is not an animal. All right. It is a monster. Number two, I said, you could have just spoke to them in common because they're humans in human form and they understand that. And he says, but my character would have, his character was only like second level. He said, my character would have known that. I says, no, your character's never seen a wan rat before. I said, it's like not based on your character's experience. I said he's
was
never
the character metagaming in the game instead
well, no,
of the player?
it was the player knowledge. It was the player knowledge kind of crossing over and saying, well, my character would have known this. So, and I says, based on what? Not based on the character's experiences. You're basing it on your experience, and then you assume that your character would know how all of his spells worked, even though he's never cast those spells before, never encountered that creature before. So I said that you have to start thinking about, what does my character know? And what has my character experienced?
So this sounds like a player that's playing bingo. They have their character sheet and they have all this cool stuff they can do, and they want to do all the cool stuff.
Well, I wouldn't go that far. It's just it was just a misunderstanding of how I apply the the rules and the concepts of the game. It was really the first time that I laid out there, because this was early on in our sessions. We were only probably about 6 or maybe 8 sessions into our whole campaign, and like I said, very low level character, still only like maybe a second level character. And so he just didn't know how I was going to separate the knowledge base. And that I think led to, and I'll use that word, it led to greater immersion and greater characterization, because now they literally start either mentally or actually physically taking notes as to what their characters have experienced, and
Well, that's good.
yeah,
That's
yeah, it's like that
so
way.
you had a happy ending.
Oh yeah, yeah, it was definitely, it was. Now whenever they encounter a new creature, I'll have one of the characters, he'll be like, oh well, I forget which one it is. I think it's well, the druid doesn't necessarily do it. One of the clerics does it all the time. So when they find a new creature, they kill a new creature, he's always pulling body parts off the thing. He says, this might be a good spell component sometime. I don't know. And they just start analyzing everything that because they know that I'm going to include that in their, knowledge base. And so if they ever encounter that creature later on, they'll know just a little bit more about it. All right. And
okay, does the player have this? Does the character have the skill to do that? Take apart animals for later use, analyzing?
No,
or
but
does the player think In the future, my character may have a skill to use
Right.
these
Well,
parts.
it's just a matter of going out there and being like, hey, I'm just going to cut this off, and maybe it'll be a use sometime later on,
Oh, okay.
and it's just it's experiencing, right? It's almost like if you were a bunch of amateur explorers that have never encountered these things before, so like very early scientific explorers, when they find shit, they kill it, they take a piece of it, they have no idea what use this is going to have, if it has any use, but it's still building up their knowledge base. It's still role playing,
Yeah.
because it is functioning within the role that their character class gives, and I know we'll talk a little bit about that as well. And I don't see it as much of a problem as you do.
Spoiler
Uh,
spoiler alert. I don't have a problem with
yeah.
class.
Oh yeah. All right. Because to me, it's like class just gives you a
But hang
different
on,
set
before
of
we get on
skills
class,
anyway.
before we go on class, I want to talk about metagaming. I don't think I
Okay.
use the term metagaming with my players or with this book I wrote. It's another toxic word. I
Mhm.
just tell players to role play what their character knows or would do or has goals for trying out things. I try to avoid the word metagame. Now, someone might say, "Well, that's Latin for such and such." Okay, whatever. But I mean, me and Samuel G would go into these 3-hour philosophical discussions
Yeah.
about metagaming. I mean, it's all it's kind of interesting, but I don't like doing inceptions at the game table. I don't want to be in someone's mind, in the mind, all that inverse psychology stuff. So I just kind of avoid it. Same with that other word that came up earlier. I don't like
Immersion.
the the verisimilitude thing, whatever.
Yeah. The
The I d-
believability.
I just want players to be in character. If they talk in character, that's the beginning of role playing. Like my character goes and opens the door.
Yeah.
My character goes and starts a fire outside,
Yeah.
burning all the. He's insane and he's burning up anyone who's not a witch in the village. Something like that. They're in character at least.
Yeah.
They might not know it at first,
Let me get caught
but then
up
it
in
sounds
the
funny
beat.
when you talk out of character. Then it starts to sound funny at the table. Like, what'd you say? Okay, like in one game recently, uh, just to be funny, one of the players said, I rolled a 3 for
Mhm.
damage, and I just said 3, and the player says, "Oh, you think a 3 can stop me? A 3? Tough guy." And he throws a 3 at me. Ah. That was kind of funny. We all laughed. Once in a while, we have those kind of things. But the part about metagaming though, I've had I still run into it in my games. This metagaming stuff where a player or me will say in the middle of the game, "What? That doesn't make sense." Because we're immersed and all of a sudden something weird happened. But in my mind, my culture, my values, my history, my white supremacy, whatever you want to call it, for the woke crowd out there, they I'll have an assumption about something, and when it doesn't happen, I'm like, what? But it's just something I don't know, and the players do know,
Mm.
so it throws me off. But I'll keep it to myself. I don't try to go, oh, you can't do that, and you start a fight and mass murder in the game session.
Mm.
I wait till after the game's over,
Right.
and then we can ask questions like that
Mm.
time. Okay, Driscoll, that time when my character was doing something, I could tell you were on the edge of your chair. You wanted to strangle me just then. Speak your piece. And we talked for like an hour after the game of all the cool stuff that happened and all the stuff we didn't understand. Like I think me and the armchair GM talked about this recently, where the South Pole, if you're on the South Pole, there's no South Star.
Right. Right.
Like we have a North Star, but no
Right.
South Star.
Yeah.
So how would you navigate in the Antarctic just by going by the stars at a certain time of the year? You would have to know for each season what stars are out in the sky at night, so you can navigate your way around in the dark. I wasn't really thinking about that because I'm not much of an astronomer, and so
Right.
I was like, huh? Because in my head, I'm thinking, I just, I'm metagaming. I just look up in the sky and look at the stars. But it's more convoluted than that if you're on the south hemisphere.
I know
Which
Lionel's
I
talking about this, just to jump, but yeah, I agree with you as far as, yeah, I don't know. They know the constellations, so any of those navigators always knew the constellation. So you didn't need the North Star in order to navigate anywhere. You just need to know known constellations anyway. Um,
yeah.
um,
Let's go back to talking
so
about class.
All right, so well, actually, let me just jump to this. These couple comments because they've been talking about real time combat, and I know that was something you were mentioning as well. And but actual combatant time slows, and that is absolutely true. If you have ever been in a fight, and I mentioned this in my video too, if you've ever been in a fight, everything goes slow motion. You don't you're just in a totally different kind of a focus. And also in a real fight you don't feel pain. It's like, get punched in the head, you'll see that it never hurts you then. In the fight, it never hurts you in the fight.
Yeah.
It always hurts you afterwards. It was like, once I get, it's either adrenaline or you know it's just a combination of things. But I've never been, you know I've never been like, I got shot in the wrist, all right, from caught a shotgun pellet in the wrist when I was a teenager riding a dirt bike through a farmer's farm, and he came out and shot at me. And it was like, back then, this was the 70s, so you didn't run home and tell mom, because mom would have taken away my motorcycle, not done anything about the guy shooting at me. And but I
Serves
didn't
you
feel
right.
it. Huh? Yeah.
Serves you right.
I know. I didn't feel it. I didn't feel it I saw, until I saw the blood. But in the moment, I didn't feel it. I was just like, let me get out of here. And then I noticed it was bleeding. And then I was like, that's when the pain hit. So you don't feel things, or time does slow in real combat. In game combat, real time, it extends because the mechanics, that's when the game mechanics are actually the most important, is in combat, because the consequences of that event are much higher than whether or not you get to pick the lock, or you
You
know
think so?
um yeah, absolutely. Your
You
cat
think so?
Very few
I don't think
characters are
I
going to
don't.
get killed picking a lock. I
I
mean,
would
let's
I
get
would
real here.
say I would say 99% of combat in D&D doesn't even matter. You could just fast forward through it all
No, no,
because the
can't.
characters are still going to be where they need to be after the combat's over.
Well, maybe in 5e, but not in first edition, not in earlier editions. Like I said, I think in our group, we have had 11 close calls. All right. So 11, we're like one roll away from death. All right. We're not
Well, how
using
about
death
this?
saves or anything.
Well, how about this?
And
Let's say 3 Minotaurs are in the room, and you fast forward. Just have one die roll that says, "Okay, this is how much hit points each of you lost just now," and now we're somewhere else in the game.
no, to me, that's what you were talking about when you said don't skip forward. That's you're
No,
breaking
you
your own
skip.
rule.
You skip over combat. You skip over combat rounds.
No,
Just
that
cut
that
to the
they're
just cut to the chase. Just do a montage really quick, and now it's like 10 minutes later in the movie. Everyone's straggling. They've lost all their health potions. Their armor's half busted apart. They're just looking for a a lake or something to clean up in before their dismembered arms get infected. Whatever, something.
Mm. There's a question for you, Shonner. Would you
Oh,
love?
Fate sucks. I would never play it.
Now, I've
It's
never
a
played
it's
it.
a third generation role playing game.
Right.
I'm not interested in that stuff.
It's strictly narrative, right? There's no die rolls. There's no.
It's a kind of like a one trick pony game. You get like aspects about your character. Like my
Mhm.
character is good at shooting things. So during the game, what a coincidence! I have an opportunity to shoot things, and my character's good at it. So I get a huge ass modifier for any die roll I do in this combat.
Oh, so there are die rolls in it. Yeah, that's right. There's
Yeah,
there's fate dice, right?
yeah.
But
The
they're
die
not.
roll is, yeah. It's a fancy die they use, but it's basically when you roll the dice, you end up with a range from -4 to 4,
Mm-hmm.
and then you add modifiers to it.
Right. You.
It's a wonky game made by what, Evil Hat or something,
Yeah,
which
Evil had, and
they're
it's based on the
they're
fudge
communists.
system. Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, that
Fudge is like it's a toolkit for making role playing games, and Evil
mm-hmm,
Hat made their Fate from it.
mm-hmm.
Well, that's good. People are playing Fudge now. 30-year-old game.
Hey, Cal, how's it going? As many times in gaming is like Seinfeld by proxy and Munchausen's. Yeah. Um, yeah, I think that, I was trying to put different categories of role playing, and I think it's pretty much universally accepted that role ROLL playing is the worst level of playing that you can do, because that's where you get your human dice roller, right? So that's
Yeah.
when the person only shows signs of life when they have to roll dice. And then
Well,
as
the
soon as the
players,
dice are rolled, they step back and they're no
yeah,
longer
the
engaged anymore.
99% of 99.9% of D&D, the players aren't role playing. The DM's doing the role playing for the players. The players are just there to roll dice.
No, I don't know. No,
So,
I'm going to disagree there
how
because
many times have you told your players, okay, you guys all go into the tavern now, and you all have a nice meal together, and you're chit chatting and shooting the breeze, maybe doing some dancing. What are you doing there? You're telling the players what their
no, no, no,
characters are
no,
doing.
no, I don't. Actually, I don't. I mean,
The
occasionally I
players just
have
sit
to
there
do.
like this. The players just sit there like this. They're not
Yeah,
even in the most of the time their camera's turned off, and they're just waiting for you to say, "Okay, roll initiative," or "I need a
yeah.
perception from you guys."
No, I must have better players then, because I mean,
I mean,
occasionally,
I am
yeah,
guilty of playing
yeah,
this way
yeah,
40 years ago. 40
yeah,
years ago. Not still doing it now
yeah.
after 40 years.
Occasionally, I have to throw a prompt out there. What do you do? Occasionally, um, because number one, I have a lot of players. All right, so I have 8 players, and they typically we've been playing now for 67 weeks. um so they're very attuned. They know each other's characters. They know what everybody can do. Basically, they know how they play each other's character, how they play their characters as well. So they know some of the idiosyncrasies of characters, and so they can interact knowing that, oh, I know what he's going to do in this situation. They know it in their head, and so they're already responding before he's even said what he's going to do, because they know each other that well. If they're all sitting in the tavern, they're yucking it up and they're talking and they're doing whatever. They don't need any prompting with that. I'll have the one player say, I'm looking over the crowd. I'm looking for anybody that kind of appears to be suspicious or whatever. It's only like when they've gone through that scene and then they're kind of unsure what the next step might be. And they're pretty cautious too, because they know I don't play games, you know what I'm saying? So that's the once in a while, especially earlier on, I used to have to tell them, no, be bold. I said, just be bold. Don't sit there and spend 20 minutes talking about how you're going to, we're going to listen at the door, we're going to do this and we're going to do that, and we're going to, double check the direction of the wind before I.
Oh yeah,
No,
that
no,
that guy. Yeah, I
just
can't stand that player
yeah,
who narrates. Oh, and I'm gonna make sure everyone's got health potion bottles full
yeah,
of health, and I make
yeah,
sure everyone's got reloaded magazines, and I've got everyone's. We're all Kevlar'd up, and
yeah.
we all got our helmets strapped on our chins, and I'm gonna be looking at my 6 and my 8 and my
Yeah,
12, and
yeah.
we're all gonna take turns sleeping. We're gonna be prepared for anything that has to it's gonna happen. I hate that player.
Do you know how I broke them out of this?
How?
Negative consequences for being slow. It was like, just for, or just not like using common sense. So the first
Or
time,
have the
yeah,
player who's yapping their mouth off like that. That's their character saying this in character, and no one's listening because they don't know what he's talking about. Meanwhile, the bad guy comes in the room and starts shooting everybody while he's yapping on about this stuff. Just keep the game going.
yes,
You only have one or two sentences to say during your turn anyway.
yeah. I like I said, I really do encourage them to take bold action. I said, I'll never really punish you for bold action, um, but I will come up with freaking devious twists if you're delaying, and if you're indecisive, and if you're doing these things. That's where you might have some negative consequences beyond just me making another random encounter roll. Oh, you just spent 10 minutes standing around doing nothing. Well, now here comes an Umber Hulk charging into your group because you didn't act, or something along those lines. So
Yeah, and
I kind of
there's
trained
world
them over
events too.
time. Yeah, yeah, that's
There's
what I'm
world
saying.
events happening too. You guys are lollygagging in the
Yeah.
saloon, and you're supposed to be, 10 hours ago, you were supposed to be such and such. Now that's happening. When you get there, it's too late.
Mm.
Where were you? We needed you. You weren't there. That kind of thing.
All right, so here we have another question. Do you think using Hollywood movies and cartoons for inspiration is good or a bad thing for RPG gaming, role playing, especially in regards to combat rules and classes? Hmm.
In regards to combat rules and classes, well, I see the word combat rules. Combat rules is bad for role playing. Period.
It's
Doesn't matter if it's coming from a movie or a cartoon or from a book or
yeah, yeah.
just your own imagination.
Yeah, combat rules are mechanics, and um, they. I agree. They're not really connected to role playing, but you can role play their results. But the actual mechanics of it is, how much you going to role play. I'm swinging my sword. I'm saying there's not very much going on there role playing wise. Um, but I don't think that movies and cartoons have inspired role playing as much as literature has inspired role playing. Role playing games. Um, I think there's more of a connection. Now, some role playing games have inspired movies and cartoons. You know, Dungeons and Dragons cartoon, or um, let me think, other games that were games before they were Halo. All right, that's a video game that inspired cartoons to be made after the video game. So I guess, well, The Witcher is kind of weird because it was obviously literature first, then it became a video game, and then it got into television, or movies or big screen kind of stuff. So
I got my Venture
Punisher.
Brothers.
Oh,
I got
oh,
my I got Venture Brothers
oh,
cartoon. One day maybe it will be a Modifius
yeah.
RPG or a Free League RPG. 30 for its 30th anniversary or something. But
um,
as far as vetting players, first thing I ask is what movies do they watch? What books do they read? I try to get into their head as far as how they see things. Do they narrate well? Are they able to narrate? Can they see in their head what I'm narrating? Or do they just see words, sentences in their head because they're a reader or a writer? Maybe they don't care for movies. Maybe they're a radio person. They just want to hear audio books all day. I ask, what audiobooks do you listen to? So when I narrate, I want to narrate kind of in the way they can relate best at.
mm-hmm.
Because if I say something, if I do a short ass narration like, okay, you guys are on a starship that's like the Enterprise. Who most people born 30 years ago don't know what that even means. So you have to really get into their head, find out, then you find out, oh, they don't know sci-fi. I don't know any sci-fi. So okay, we won't do a sci-fi then. Do you know Western? Do you know horror? Do fantasy? Everyone seems to know what fantasy is because everyone was brought up with the VHS copies of what were those movies? Lord of the Rings.
Right. Oh, the
The
cartoon.
DVDs of Lord.
Yeah.
No,
Oh,
well, those things too, I guess, but mostly the movies, the DVDs before the extended versions came out. Every
right.
kid would just fall asleep with that playing on loop on their player. Fantasia, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So everyone knows what fantasy is. Everyone knows what that is. And then, because I want to know how, if they're interested in role playing, I got to talk on their level, I suppose. The other thing is, oh, you removed. What was that one? What was the
Oh,
other
which
thing?
one?
The
Oh,
movies and the other thing.
let's
What else was
see.
in there? Movies and
Oh, yeah. Yeah,
cartoons.
movies and cartoons. Inspiration is a good or
Mhm.
bad thing for RPG role playing,
Oh yeah,
gameplay
for
and role
setting.
playing.
When me and my dudes are deciding what our next game setting is going to be,
Hmm.
or the mood or the tone, one of the guys will say, "Hey, have you guys read this yet?" He holds up a magazine, some manga thing. I don't read manga. So I'm like, no use to you guys. I'll see you in the next game session. They play without me. Because not all of us agree all the time on what we're going to role play next. And they GM as well, not just me all the time.
Right. Oh, so it's always one shots?
Yeah.
Okay. And
Well, for me at least. They might play a campaign together. I don't know.
right. Now, doesn't that make it more difficult to role play if you're not having somewhat of a persistent character?
I don't know. Movies are long enough, aren't they? To tell a story?
Yeah, but after a movie's over, you usually walk away from it, it's over. You're not
Yeah.
still, the character is only going to develop as far as the movie runs. But if you're
Oh,
running a longer
there's not much.
campaign,
There's not much development for a character though. Maybe there is.
after a long, serious time,
In
sure
uh
there is.
in District 9, the guy's turning into an alien. He's able to
Right?
use the alien guns and stuff.
Mhm.
And so he changes over time.
It's,
my
well,
my one shots
hey,
tend to be like
let's
District
use
9.
let's use a movie for that then. How does Ripley's character change from Alien through, um I guess she only goes through the first 3 movies, right? Alien 3, I think, was the last one she was in. So Ripley's character changes, or through that time. Same thing with like Sarah Connor changes over. Terminator 1, and then going into Terminator 2.
Well, she changed. How did she change? She learned how to use the this thing that works on micro airwave density changes.
Well, which one are you talking about? Sarah Connor
And
or Ripley?
Ripley in the first one.
No, she understands she starts to understand the connection that the alien mother has to various
She
things.
was
Like she starts
she was
getting.
the Virgo on the ship. She knew the things. Do you think that she had to be someone like a liaison for the audience, or could the audience figure things out without her being in all the scenes?
Um,
Like Mad Max, he's a liaison for the audience. He doesn't really do much in movies. You're just seeing things from his point of view, is all.
right, but you see his character develop over. You still see his character develop over the three
Yeah,
movies.
yeah.
Um, that you wouldn't
But
be
in
able
each movie, let's say each movie is a one shot, right? Is there a whole lot of development in each one shot? Because
No, but you don't get the
there's
full effect of the development until the third movie. You
because
know what
there's
I'm
fast
saying?
forward. There's fast forward in the next movie.
Yeah,
Time goes by between each film. We don't know what he's been doing.
yeah.
He looks tougher. He looks meaner. He looks more pissed off than the last movie.
I'm going to bring up.
Something happened to him.
I'm going to bring up. So Captain Kirk. All right. So
Okay.
William Shatner's Captain Kirk.
Okay.
Uh, his character doesn't develop from one episode to the next. He's the same
No.
character every single episode.
Well, then you have a flashback. You have a flashback
Yeah,
then if you
it's
want to
like
see
because that's
that he
truly
improved.
episodic. Um, you get the whole character. I think in a single episode. Um, he really does not develop in character in the TV series episode to episode. Like
Right.
you could even put them in a sequence, by looking at his character growth. So there is no character growth, I don't think, in the TV series. You might see it over the course of the movies where he changes a little bit, but not in an episodic thing. So if you are looking at role-playing games and you're doing just single session one shots and everything, um unless you're doing a really long session. So I don't know, and we didn't broach that yet. I mean, we're
Let's
not
say you
talking
do.
about.
Let's say you do a 3 or 4 hour session,
You might see some
and
character growth.
at the end of the session, you have a pretty darn good story that just happened. Wouldn't you just be happy with the story that you were in? What
Yes,
more
you'll
would
like
you
that
need?
session, but you might want to see what will happen with my character in the next session.
Well, then
And
we would agree. During in the after session, we would decide. Hey, do you want to do some more with these characters in another one shot?
okay, well, it wouldn't be a
Maybe
one.
we want to. Maybe some of us want to try a different character in the same setting, or
Okay,
maybe uh, we want to use the same characters but in another setting. Go to a whole different planet this time.
but yeah, and that's episodic, but the character is still moving forward. You have a campaign then. Once you're repeating characters, even in different setting, it becomes a campaign.
I think you have a franchise. Now, what's the saying? If you have 2 episodes of something, I don't see the characters changing all that much. You just have an even more interesting story maybe afterwards that you got to role play in.
Yeah, I don't know. I've seen characters. I've had characters that changed over time too. Um,
I mean,
but
if your goal is to just go from 0 to hero in your game, then my book's not for you.
yeah,
Period.
no, I'm not talking about character levels and as far as like development of power. I'm talking about the development of a character. So um,
I mean, that
I'm
could just be on the role player, the person role
right.
playing
Yeah,
that character. If they want to do any kind of improvements, I mean, the character gets wounded and then they get healed and then they have different ideas of future combat. Maybe they become a pacifist with their
Yeah.
character.
And that's what I'm
Spock,
talking about. Yeah.
Spock in Star Trek 4, he's a Hari Krishna character for most of the movie because his brain is ajar, I suppose.
I thought I did this
So,
one already. I might be
did
far behind.
Spock direct that episode? I can't remember. But anyway,
Oh,
yeah, sometimes the actors want to just do something different out of character, make him more funny, more comical.
no, Max, we are not starting over. Let's start over from the beginning. Uh, let's see. Yeah, I guess so. I mean, I still think that you're kind of limiting your role playing,
Or you get
or the
wealth, your
potential for
character
role
can
playing.
always accumulate wealth. During this one shot, your character become more and more powerful, like Jean Grey did in X-Men
Mm,
3. That's advancement, probably.
yeah, but again, I'm not talking about advancement necessarily. I'm talking about character growth. I'm talking about a character,
You
realizing that,
dented helmet,
hey,
dented
yeah.
helmet here. He's one of those guys that says, Driscoll, as long as everyone's having fun,
Mm.
okay.
Well, I mean, I'm gonna say I wouldn't say as long as everyone's having fun but everyone needs to have fun. I
Yeah,
mean, if everyone is not having fun, your game is going to fall apart. I'm not going to
right.
mention, games that we've probably heard about that totally fell apart.
What
But
if you want to do something that's more than just fun?
well, that's what I'm saying. It's got to be. That's why I'm talking about character growth. All right. So character growth is more than just, oh, we had fun during this session. Character growth is thinking about your character in the future and where you want to see your character moving, um as it develops over time. Um I've had players come to the realization that they want to change character class. I said, I've been playing all this time. I've been playing with this character as a ranger. This actually happened in my game. And he says, I no longer want to be a ranger. I want to become a bard. All right. And
Well,
in
see,
eight,
that could happen in a one shot.
yeah, but that wasn't something that developed in just one game session.
Remember
It-
this the Star Trek, the 2009 Star Trek movie where Kirk, he's on the Enterprise, then he's not on the Enterprise. Then he's back on the Enterprise, then he's captain of the Enterprise. This all happens in one movie. Remember?
yeah, but that's not.
They exiled him to like some ice moon
Yeah,
around Vulcan
yeah,
or
I know
something.
what you're saying. But that's
And then
not.
he ends up being captain of the Enterprise, and he's got Scotty now on the ship.
Yeah, that's not good storytelling. It's not good. It's
Well,
not
it's
good
cinematic.
narration. It's doing
It's
exactly
cinematic.
what it's doing. No, it's. I don't think it is cinematic. It's time warping. It's glossing over. It's exactly what your book
Yeah,
says
some
not
some
to do.
some of it's railroading probably in
Yeah,
that movie when they're running around a brewery,
yeah,
a brewery. They're
yeah.
not even they didn't have an engine room, so they're running around in some brewery somewhere. It was nonsense.
Yeah.
But
So I
there's
don't
action.
know.
Well, I guess I'm just getting to the action. They did a lot of stuff. They did a lot of stuff in that one movie. So my argument would be, in a one shot, you can do a lot of stuff. You could I would argue that in a one shot you can do just as much as a regular D&D group can do in 6 sessions.
Mm.
So after a one shot, you are worn out. It's like that was unreal. That was like, okay, we did all the things. That's why they're one shots usually,
Yeah.
cuz you've done all the things with that character.
Yet to me, when I think of one shots, and then the only time that I participate in one shots is at conventions, and um, it's very very normal for all of the characters to be dead by the end of a one shot at a convention. They're almost designed to do that, you know. they're designed to have that ultimate like ending where it's either you're all dead or you know manage to survive by the skin of your teeth, and you walk away from that and you're only thinking about, oh, that was a fun time, but you quickly forget your characters. You know, there's no, you know, and to me
Oh
that's
no! After one of my games, you remember your characters, you remember all the other characters, you remember the NPCs, you remember what happened.
but I'm going to want to play that
It's
character
stuck.
again. Yeah, I will want to
You
play that
could,
character again. Yeah, no, that's
you
fine
could.
then. Yeah, as long
We
as
have
we
a
can.
vote. We have a
Yeah,
vote. We have a social contract for the
yeah.
next game. Do we use our same characters again? You know, I just don't. I'm not going to commit to doing a campaign because my job hours change drastically from month to month. So I can't guarantee I'll still be. And if I miss one game session of someone's campaign, I'd rather not even be in their campaign. If I know I'm going to miss a session or two.
No, yeah. I
Just
mean,
like with the
it
bowling,
happens.
just like with the
Yeah,
bowling tournament.
bowling
If I
leagues. Yeah.
can't be, I like to bowl, but if I can't be in a bowling tournament the whole entire time, if I'm going to be gone one of those weekends or whatever, I can't commit to being in. I can't be on your bowling team.
You would not make a good World Series player. It's like, I'm going to miss this
Oh,
game.
160 games or some nonsense. Ay, ay, ay. I'm going to call in absence.
So let's see. So solo RPG. Yeah, I mean, it's a totally different kind of. I'm addressing solos. You know, thing. It's a totally different kind of role playing. Um, you can role play. I mean, I role play when I'm playing Skyrim. All right. How do you role play playing Skyrim? All right. By not following any of the freaking stories, you just when you get in there, you do whatever the hell you want to do. You're role playing now. You know, it's like I'm going to spend my whole time, you know, stealing skoma, you know, and filling my house with as much skoma as I can find.
Yeah.
I'm role playing a character. Am I playing the same game? Sure, I am, but I'm, you know, it's a solo game and I'm playing it my way. Um, you know, so anytime that you're playing a solo RPG, you're just engaging in a different kind of role playing. But you're still role playing. I'll you know I'll agree to that. It's less interesting with just by yourself though.
Depends on the game. Solo roleplay. When was the last time I did a solo role? Oh, like 6 years ago, I guess I did a solo roleplay with my computer.
Mhm.
She was the character. I was doing the DMing. That was kind of a solo thing, but technically, I had another player with me while I was doing it. So
Oh,
one on one, I guess one on one is the least I'll go in a roleplay session. Just me and another person.
hmm.
If it's just me, then I'm just going through the motions, doing the things. Maybe I would do that for generating an adventure to then make into a book. I'm just taking random notes almost. I've tried all the solo roleplay things, but role playing is way better than whatever some D100. Roll a D100 that tells you to go to which 100th chart, which you then roll a D100 on, and then you go to another 100th chart list of charts. No, I can't do that. I can't. It's too much dice rolling. You're not role playing at all in those
Yeah,
things. In your head, you're like, oh, I'm role playing a character. Okay, well, you're referencing a book as far as you can. Other people watching you just see you
mhm.
referencing a book constantly. Like when someone says, oh, I'm role playing in my head. That's fine. But if you're not talking, that makes terrible audiobook
Mhm.
recordings. Everyone needs to be talking. Everyone needs to be saying where they're at and what they're doing. So when you play it back, it sounds like a really cool story that's going
Right.
on.
Yeah, I agree, Dented Helmet. He's talking about there's a massive difference between a local gaming shop group and a group of friends who play each week. Yeah, I mean, it's
I don't see
also
any difference. To me,
oh,
they're both the
there's
same.
well, unless you're playing with the he's talking about like a pickup group at a local gaming shop. Um,
And
at least I
that's
believe.
that's that's the same as what's the difference? Let's say you do that at a game store with just random people, and you just do it every week with random people or with the same people each week. What difference does the game quality make?
The oh, you're gonna start to you're gonna start knowing how each other plays and or runs the game, and so you are able to kind of get past those little learning curves, and you go right into the action. You go right into into the role playing and into running the game. So you
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 do,
don't
you
have
do,
those delays.
you do. Because let's say you're running the game, right? You're just going to run the game like you normally would. But the players, though, you're what,
But
it's hard to explain.
if the players are familiar
The
with
players are
the
just going to do what they're just going to do. So you're saying you get to know how they play, and you
yeah,
just kind of work
and they
with
know
them,
how you run,
work around them.
and there's none of that learning curve that has to take place. Like I don't
But
start my
everyone runs their game the same way, pretty much, don't they? So the players already know how you're going to run the game.
yeah, but not if they're a brand new group of players.
I
You
think they
know,
would.
I don't.
I think
I
if they saw you and you show up and you got your AD&D books and you got your game
yeah.
screen out and you got your dice, they have an idea of how this game's gonna go.
Oh
They're
no,
waiting for you to say,
there's no
"What do you
way.
do?"
No, there's no way.
They're gonna wait for you to
No,
say, "What do you do?"
no. You can look at like
And the players
I
are gonna
mean
be
we
saying, "What can
we
I do? Is
I
there
think that
something I can do?
yeah
I want my character to go." And some players actually role play in their first game session ever. You'll see
right.
this happen. Brand new players will role play the first time they play D&D, and
I
then they get shot down. They get shot down by the DM. You can't do that. Nope, that's not allowed. Up next. Who else wants to take a turn? Nope.
I
And
think
they're
that some
shot
of us
and they're put into their place.
yeah.
And they stay quiet and they don't roll. They don't say anything because if they say anything about what their character's doing, they're asked to make a roll and they're going to get harmed because they're level 1.
I think that some of us have intentionally corrupted your point of view because we keep on sending you bad examples to suffer through. I think that's what it is. Whether it be 28 millimeter or myself or whatever, we always send you the shittiest examples of role playing
I mean,
and
I know
judge
there's
it
some
that
good
way.
ones. There's some
Yeah,
good. That's why I don't say 100% of D&D
yeah,
players. I only say 99.9% of D&D players. I mean,
yeah.
once in a blue moon, I'll go okay, like about 40 miles west of me, there's a game store, but they also sell radio controlled airplanes and stuff, which
Right.
is kind of weird. I'll go there cuz I know there's a group that plays D&D 5th edition and they seem to do an okay job of it.
Hmm.
They're not all blue-haired crazy people. They're not danger-haired girls with the nose rings and
Yeah.
tattoos on their faces and stuff. They're just normies. They look like normies, like a normal person. And but they talk out of character. They laugh too much. They're constantly playing with their dice when it's not their turn. That irks me. So I don't stay in the game store for too long. But I'll listen for like 5 minutes just to see, has the hobby improved in the last 6 months since I've been here? No, and I leave.
Well, you're not going to see that in a game store. You're not going to, yeah, you're not going to see that in a game store. You're not going to see, or even on. It's very very few and far between that you'll see that game on YouTube. Let's say that really is like, whoa, this person knows. Like I know you just did that level to three one where, yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, that guy knows what he's doing. He at least understands what good DMing is, and he understands what a good player is, and a player that
He
knows how to
he
role
he
play.
can he knows
Yeah,
how to satirize
exactly.
cartoon characters.
But
He knows how to be serious. He knows when he's making a point, when he's making an
yeah,
observation, or he's being hyperbole. It's kind of cool.
right. And like, but he has to have the basic understanding of what the ideal is for those things in order to satire, do a
Yeah.
satire of it, or a parody of it, and you know, I would love to see him, and I'm sure that he probably does have his own games out there where he's running with other players and not him posing as the players at his table doing a satire of it. But yeah, I'd like to see him DMing, and
Well,
see,
I think I've watched his
I'm
games.
pretty sure he does have games, and they're
They
probably
it was it was like any other celebrity playoff D&D where the actors from some TV show are playing a game and
no,
they're
I mean,
just
I mean,
goofing
with just
off and
his
having
regular
fun.
people, just with his
No,
regular
he does
people.
it. His regular people are just kind of, showy. They're
Oh
trying to
yeah, all
entertain
right,
the audience.
all right. So yeah, maybe that's not.
Instead of just role playing, like when I role play, I'm not conscious about I'm during our game sessions when we used to do live stuff, we weren't thinking about, oh, there's people watching us right now. We
Mm,
just role played. We're on camera, but we're only focused on the camera being used. Like me, like I'm not even thinking that we're live right now. I'm just
mhm,
thinking about I'm here talking with you, you're talking with
right.
me. It's just you and me.
Yeah.
And there's like random people chatting to you for some
Hmm.
reason. I'm not even thinking that we're live.
Yeah.
But when some people want to get subscribers though, and they're running a live D&D game session, they do the whole, fantasy grounds thing, the
Yeah.
roll 20 thing. They got the animations, they got the dice going, and they got the music and the pink hair.
Hmm.
They're trying to entertain the troops who are subscribers to their channel because they want to sell them t-shirts, dice, mugs,
Right.
mouse pads. Anyway, so what's the
And
latest question
and the
as I
bisexual
ramble?
lighting, behind you. You need that
I don't
too.
have
All right. So,
any. I don't have any of that behind me. I have none of that.
that's why you can't do you can't live stream your games. You don't have the proper lighting behind you.
Yeah.
Um, so let's see. Same
I
here.
know
One
Walmart
shot for
sells that
Bluddworth.
stuff. I should get some strips. Get a pink strip, a green one, and a yellow,
All right. So let's
and then
see.
use the app to cycle the colors behind me. That would be so awesome.
Yeah, Max. Max is bringing up. Yeah, one shots are great for just like trying out new game systems or introducing players to different game systems and that kind of stuff. Like I said, I mean, every convention game is always a one shot just by its very nature. So, but yeah,
Well,
it's a different kind of gameplay, I think, than than you would have in an established group that you're seeing every single week and you're running a long campaign. um it's going to have a very different feel to it. And so you're going to get something different out of it, and it's a different skill set, I think, as well. um some people are great DMing long campaigns, and then they're horrible at running a one shot. They just can't get their mind set into, the proper way of running it.
well, when you start a session, do you go on for like 10 or 12 minutes describing the scene before the players utter a single word?
No, no, we usually just jump right into where we kind of left off. Like I said,
Okay.
we're talking, and we talk to each other in between game sessions. All right. So, we play every Tuesday. So we'll chat here and there. Sometimes I have one player who takes all of our he takes the major like the major event of our last session, and he usually makes a very comical looking like magazine cover, of
Oh
that
yeah. Yeah.
that thing, right? And so
Yeah,
it's usually a
I had a
quirky.
player. Yeah, I had a player that used to have a website, and he would
Yeah.
post like little like a comic book of what happened using Poser.
Yeah, yeah,
We'd all
he
laugh and
does these
stuff.
little things. Yeah, I mean, he makes it look like a real, role-playing magazine cover and everything. And he'll usually take the one event and finds, I don't know how he does it with like images or whatever. He probably uses that AI thing that, you know, he came
Could
up with a
be.
teddy bear that looked like it was all brutalized when our druid nearly got killed from an
Yeah.
ice storm spell. And so he showed this bear. This is the druid in bear form, and she's all it was a teddy bear.
Yeah.
It looked like it was mauled,
Yeah.
and
Mid Journey's the best of all of them for doing that.
yeah. So I maybe that's where he gets it from. But yeah, so we're constantly talking, and he's the player that actually approached me right after a game session, and he basically said, if it is possible, I'd like for my character to uh, be able to do this down the road, or be able to, find a means of gaining this secondary skill because it would mesh in with the rest of my character, and kind of, I want to eventually get to the point where my character can do this, and you only get this from a long campaign,
Okay,
and
how about if you just start the character at that level with that skill and everything?
no, that's skipping forward. There's no growth in that. It's like, no. It's like I would have started my characters at level 0, if we knew, like, if we wanted to do that, we certainly could have. But there's a big um there's a
I like jumping to the huge ass fight scene at the beginning of the first game session. Everyone's overpowered, everyone has all the things, and then the universe goes and it breaks up and shatters, and then you create new characters that are left, or maybe you were gods and now you're mortals and you have to fend for yourself. That would be a good beginning of a one shot. But the players at least have a
yeah.
chance to do the cool stuff without having to go 6 months in a campaign before they can do that cool stuff. They got it right now. Do it.
Yeah. No, I'm the exact opposite. I like,
Hero to
from
zero.
from dirt farmer to
Would you ever go zero to
maybe
hero? Would you ever go hero to zero?
I would do it if I was doing a cinematic thing like you're describing. Like I would have them.
Like one of the characters is slowly de-leveling as everyone else is leveling, and he hasn't admitted this to the other characters yet, or she hasn't. She
No,
might be getting younger but less powerful.
no, I've never done it that way.
And then there's a point where she says, I have to return back to my home world. Goodbye.
Yeah, no,
She floats off. And she's like a little amoeba thing. I don't know.
I have started every campaign that I have ever run, regardless of game system, with characters at either 0 level or first level, and characters that were always exactly the age that their character class and race called for, so that they'd have very minimal backstory. They're almost always, like I said, they almost always start as some dirt farmer, and
Yeah.
then they go on, and the world expands as they're exploring it, and if they
Yeah.
if they get
Yeah.
killed at second level, they get killed at second level. If they make it to ninth level, well, now they've gone from 1 to 9. They've gone from basically 0 to hero. Now they're a lord, or a lady, or a very powerful wizard with a huge reputation, or a notorious thief, or a if I'm playing a like a war game type of thing, like Twilight 2000 and everything. Well, now you're a lieutenant colonel. You know what I'm saying? You've moved up all the ranks and everything like that. And now you're a badass with
Yeah.
with tactics and all that stuff. But no, I've always been I want to see you start and go through a long, a
How long?
long
How
campaign.
long?
Well,
How
we're
long? How long
we're
is a campaign?
my current campaign right now is 67 weeks.
You think
Players
that's
are
a bit
playing the
long?
same character. No, I think in many old
You answered
schoolers'
very
minds,
quick.
it's
You
not
answered very
long.
quickly. Nope.
Um, No, because we anticipate, and tried to do the calculus in my mind, of looking at how AD&D First Edition experience points and how long it takes to go from one level to the next, and how they compound over the and one time I kind of just like did a very simple mathematical thought process, and I was like, this campaign should take 2 years and 11 months. You know what I'm saying? So that's what I started them off with. Like, that's what I told them. I was like, I anticipate this campaign to run roughly 3 years. All right.
Okay, so each game session, how much game time goes by?
In a game
And
session,
yeah,
sometimes only a few hours. Because if they're in a let's say they're doing a dungeon crawl, all right, only a few hours. So the game session is almost 1-to-1.
they
Um,
spend a few hours in that dungeon.
in a portion of a dungeon, yes.
So let's say this was a movie. Some audience people wanted to go see a 3-hour movie, and the whole movie takes place inside a dungeon.
No, you know what? It would take them. It would take them. Let me try to think. So I ran Keep on the Borderlands. I think they spent about 36 hours in the Keep on the Borderlands adventure. So if you wanted to watch a movie related to our experience running through Keep on the Borderlands, you'd have to sit there and watch 36 hours of a movie.
I saw that movie. They never saw outside. They never stood outside and had
Yeah.
fresh air.
No, they slept inside when they were there. They had to set up a
The whole
defensible
movie was filmed indoors.
position. Yes, in a dungeon indoors. In caverns indoors.
So
Hobbled
I, I c-
around.
I can do a lot in a one shot. So I'm thinking if you had like, let's say you said 67 weeks.
67 weeks. So that would
So,
be
but you're
roughly.
you're I'm gonna say you're not like most typical D&D players. Most typical D&D players get in a 4-hour game session, they get maybe tops maybe 30 minutes of game time done.
Oh, no, no. We probably have, I would say, about, if we're playing a 3-hour game session, sometimes we go a little bit over. Anytime we go over 3 hours, that's all gaming being done that goes over. That's the
Overtime.
only time we never bullshit our way overtime. So we're always engaged in something going on.
So
Uh,
no one's looking at their watch going, "Oh my goodness, we went long on this one. Let's hurry up and wrap this up somewhere."
no, we never. I always try to. So I've had a few sessions that almost went 4 hours because they were just in the middle of something, and
Yeah,
want to
that's
bring
that
it
makes
to a
sense.
proper closure.
That's good. So you're different than most D&D players then. That's good.
Yeah, and do we
I've
have
I've
some?
I've had I've had one shots where we agree for 4 hours,
Mm.
but then it might go 5.5 hours because we're just in it. We're in it. Stuff's getting done.
Yeah,
We
I
d- we
don't
don't
have
want it.
the. Yeah, I don't have the physical or mental capacity to do much beyond 4 hours unless we're really in it. And then I can go a little bit longer than
Well,
that.
how many?
But
Okay, I have a
but my
question for you. How
my
many?
back
How many
end.
time? How many times do you roll the dice in just one game session? How many
we
times do
have
dice hit the table?
we have had some game sessions with zero combat. Not very many, but we've had a few game sessions with zero combat. All all narrative, all learning stuff, maybe a couple die rolls here and there, but not very many. Um, our longest combat, um, our longest combat lasted 11 rounds, and that took about 40 minutes. Took about 40, and that's with 8 players. You know what I'm saying? So they're very efficient, and like I said, we streamlined certain things like the dice mechanics where we're using the electronic dice roller, right? So we're not,
Yeah.
so it automatically does the
So
attack roll
everyone
and the
knows
damage roll.
everyone knows where to click. They don't say what button
Oh
do I
yeah,
click
yeah.
on
No,
again?
everyone knows where to click, and
That's good.
more importantly, everybody knows where the characters are in relation to each other. Getting back to what your big points are, and that's one of
Yeah.
the best parts about having the physical aspects of it. Now, we're not using all of the bells and whistles of Roll20 or anything like that. I mean, I use just a blank page, and then I just throw their character icons down, so they kind of know where they all are in relation to each other, and they can move themselves around in relation to each other. And then I will have their opponents coming in from different directions, and they'll know where they all are in relation to each other. And then the players are just so attuned to each other that they kind of know what the others are going to do. And getting back to like a certain aspect of role playing, like each of them knowing their roles, it's not just class roles. Like I have two clerics in the group, and one cleric is the is the one that's always looking to see how everyone else is doing and seeing where he's needed to go to next. So he's a very situational kind of cleric. The other one is shooting his bow most of the time. He's an elven cleric. He's shooting his bow most of the time, and he worries about casting spells, usually healing spells, after the combat's over. So I have two clerics, but each of them have a very different role, and they know they know what they're doing. They know that they know what the other players are going to do. They know the paladin's always going to be straight out there. They know the thief might, either might be at the point, or he'll kind of hide off in the side a little bit. He's had the most close calls in getting killed, so he's kind of gun shy when it comes to combat. And it just has developed over time, so we don't have as much downtime when we go into long combat sequences. They're very, very smooth, I should say. And for AD&D first edition, the fact that we still have to use a combat chart, it's a remarkable how smooth that it is. All right, but that comes with experience. Something that's not something that it began with, and it's not something that you're going to get from a one shot. If I was one shotting with these 8 players, it would take us 3 hours to get a half an hour worth of gameplay done.
Well, why would you have that many players?
I started with 12.
What?
I started with
Okay, remember
12.
Alien started with what, 10 characters?
Yeah.
And they whittled it down to maybe 4 or 5 characters, and then
Yeah.
3 characters.
It started with 12. Then 2 never showed up for the first session, so they were eliminated in session 0. And I had to have 2 separate session zeros because I did have so many players interested in playing. We launched initially with 10 players, and then over the first couple
I
of
remember
weeks, it
you
dwindled
had 2
down to
separate
8.
games, right?
I'm
Did
doing
you have
2
2
separate
separate
games.
games and then you merged the players together?
No, I was thinking of doing that, and then I
Oh, okay.
decided no. I decided,
Okay.
I got used to having so many players. It became, you know, so it was like I started with 10, and when it went down to 8, I was at that point saying, "Wow, 8 is really easy now." You know what I'm saying? It's like I started all the way up here, and then when it came down to just about here, I'm I'm probably as comfortable with 8 players as most other people might be comfortable with just 5 or 4.
Yeah, when I was learning how to GM, I don't know, 6 or 7 years ago, I thought 5 players is good. Me and 5 other players, that's fine. 6 players.
Hmm.
But I noticed there was times where some players just weren't saying anything, and I wasn't vetting players back then. I would just let any rando into this hangout. And I noticed if they weren't saying much or contributing at all, they just didn't get to be in the next game. They're gone. And I found that having 3 players, me and 3 other players, is perfect for some reason. Because they each have their own character, and then I have a bunch of my own characters. So that's enough. That's enough characters. I'm not really thinking of how many players are in the game. I'm thinking more about how many characters are in the game.
Max wants you to run a DCC funnel. A funnel game, right?
Yeah. It sounds interesting, but again, it's another one of those 0 to 0 games.
No, that's 0 to 0. The funnel kills all but one character for each player. Each player starts with 4 characters.
Yeah,
And then the one that survives is the one that becomes first level, and then they play that character moving forward. That's the system of it.
Okay, so it's level 1 to hero then.
Yeah.
No, Traveler's fine for me. But the class thing, I want to say that Traveler has classes, but they're just called careers. So when you make a character, you're making either a pilot or a scientist or a diplomat
Yeah,
or
so
a
it's the same
merchant.
thing. Yeah, they call it careers or professions.
They call it profession or career instead of a class. It's the same thing, but that's where the similarity ends, is just what your character is. Each career has a certain kind of skills, certain kind of attributes you need to even be in those careers. So that's kind of a class thing. But once you start getting skills, you can use the skills the same as any other career person. It's like, oh, you're the Duke of such and such. That means you can use a gun at +2 compared to me, who I'm just a farmer using the same exact weapon. That kind of thing.
Yeah, I'll just say, like, this games aren't movies. One-shots could be, though. One-shots should be more like movies.
Yeah, Bill's excuse there, games aren't movies. That's the pathetic excuse for like the last 40 years. But Shonner, games aren't movies.
Well, I mean, I will say
it's
this.
an excuse. It's an excuse for why they don't role play.
If there's the most cinematic game that I've played, with it kind of built into the system, is Modiphius's Conan 2D20. All right, game designed to be cinematic. Even has certain triggers. If you do certain things, you not only gain momentum, which allows you to go even more, very Conan-esque and start slaughtering
those games like come crazy from movies.
But also, well, no, what they come from is not really the movie. What it comes from is the original stories. And how do you make a game system that can duplicate the things that Conan was able to do in Robert E. Howard's original writing? All right, how does Conan go into a room and kill 15 guards? All right, the game mechanic allows
the guards are minions or peons.
Yeah, they're peons, but
they're one hit, one death.
Right, and that's what the game mechanic creates, is the circumstances for that. And then once you've killed like 10 different characters, within a single combat, all right, then it triggers a display ability, where then this is where Conan is now able to, or your character is able to, lift the head of someone that they just killed, and that will force everybody, all the other minions in the group, to make a morale check. And it's very, very cinematic, and it's fast, it's smooth, and it really.
Well, I wouldn't say it's fast, but
oh no,
I understand its mechanic though.
The combat resolution is very, very quick. All right, probably because, again, you don't have to look at any chart to see if you have successes. you're looking at the die, and the die are telling you this is the number of successes I have. This is the successes I needed. You already know the successes you needed, and that's it. All right. So there's no
How many?
chart.
How many of these do you want to roll in your hand at once?
Um, that game, I think the most that you might roll is like 60-20 or 70-20 or whatever, but you're not adding up the numbers. The D20s have
You're
the
looking for the
success.
success count,
Yes, you're looking for just the number of successes. So
and that's a
I
die
might
pool
need,
game.
I might
I
need,
don't like
yeah,
die pool
exactly.
games.
You might need 3 successes on this particular act, but I get to roll 6 die to get those 3 successes. All right. And so I roll
And
those
people
6 die.
people have
And
fun. I'll admit,
yeah,
people have fun playing that game, but they're not role playing. They're just playing. They're ROLL playing at that point. How
well,
many
there's,
dice do I roll?
but again,
Let's see. I got 1, 2. Then they roll, and then you can see them counting in their brain how many successes they got. And they're like, "What am I rolling for again?" And then,
yeah,
I
I thought we separated dice rolling from role playing. I mean, we already established that you don't
well, you
have
want
to
to
consider
you
the
want to use
dice
a
rolling.
you want to use a minimal die mechanic that's easy to learn. You can do it in your head, and it only takes a few seconds to roll the dice, and then you move on. You move on with the role play. Some of these games, well, most of these games, the minute they crack out the dice, the minute the combat turn begins, that's it. Whatever role play was happening, that's done. That's over. That's gone. They're now playing the board game
Uh,
until everything's dead. Kill all
I
the
don't.
things that aren't you and your companions.
Well, usually whenever I've run Conan 2D20, I've always run it with just one player. So there always been a solo character. Maybe they had like a sidekick or something like that, but for the most part, just one and one, and
Yeah,
running
that's
it
actually a
that
good
way.
idea.
Yeah, that's the only way I've ever run that game. I've never run it with a group. I don't think the game works well. The 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 game works incredibly well with just a GM and one player. It's almost
So
like
how
it's
would
by
you do Star
design.
Trek? Isn't
I
Star Trek supposed to have like
it
different
does
crew members?
different mechanics for Star Trek than there is for Conan 2D20. And Star Trek isn't thematically, and it isn't designed for that. You need crew members for Star Trek. You don't for Conan 2D20. You don't need different, because they can get different skills. They can choose their skills. Conan is probably more skill based than Star Trek is.
See, I would argue using Mongoose Traveler to play Star Trek or Conan.
Well, I always like using games that are designed for their specific purpose. This is something like I say to Scott Garibay every once in a while. So I was like, I don't use a hammer to put a screw in the wall. You know what I'm
Yeah,
saying? It's like
I use a
there's a
game
game out
mechanic.
there.
I'll use a game mechanic that's designed for role play. And for me, that's Mongoose Traveler,
If
second edition.
yeah, if I'm looking to role play, if I'm looking to run a role playing game based on Fallout, I'm going to use Modifista's Fallout. If I'm looking to use, if I'm going to look to use a game for aliens, then I'm going to use Free League's Alien, right? Or Free League's Lord of the One Ring for Lord of the Rings, or Mercs or something.
Yeah.
I'm going to use the game that's designed to do that particular type of game. I don't use. I'm not really big on generic games that you can use all across, different genres and everything like that. I like to find the game that fits that genre the best, and then that's the one that I play. There's only one game that I'm looking at seriously, and that's because I think Troll Lords makes a phenomenal system. They're actually making a new generic game system based on their system that they use for Castles and Crusades. So I'm actually seriously considering picking that up. But I mean, I have GURPS and I have other game systems that are very flexible. You could use them for different genres. But I haven't played GURPS in 35 years. I mean, it's like it's just not.
Yeah, if I wasn't gonna role play
Mm,
with my buddies at the table, if I was just gonna play any old role playing game without role play in it, then yeah, I would just pick a game that used whatever mechanic the game came with, I suppose. But for me, since I'm a role player, I try to use a generic rule system that you can role play in, like GURPS.
mm.
Generally useless rules system. You can't role play in GURPS. It's a video game that you play by hand. That's what GURPS is.
I like what Rogue Scholar says here. Palladium system works across all genres if you have enough duct tape and gravy. So, and
I remember
actually,
reading that book.
yeah,
That's the book that got me to buy Mongoose Traveler first edition over at Barnes and Noble because they were next to each other. And I picked up the Palladium book. It was one of the Rifts books, and they had Robotech and stuff. And I'm like, should I get this? Because I was looking at Pathfinder. I was looking for something other than GURPS to play
mm-hmm.
back then. It was back in 2008, and I started reading the mechanics, the die mechanic for Palladium games. I'm like, what is this? What is this? What is this? And then I put it back, and then I saw the Traveler book right next to it. I was like, what is this? And I bought Mongoose Traveler first edition that day, and I've been using it since, pretty much. The rules are on just 2 pages. 2 pages of the
Yeah,
book explain the die mechanic.
yeah.
That's how
I,
simple it is.
I just got this in the mail yesterday. So
I
this
remember
is
you
the
had the PDF first, right?
um.
Was
No,
it
I
you
didn't.
doing the
I didn't
PDF?
have. I didn't have this PDF first. I had the other one. I guess first edition, Mongoose first edition
Oh,
PDF
that's right. That's
first.
right.
So I just got this. I just got this with the PDF. So I was going to start tearing through this and taking a look at it. I see what you're talking about. There's no index. There's no table of contents in it. I was like, I could see what they're complaining about. I was like, oh, so how do you know? This is why I got to flip through this whole thing. I got to put little tabs in there just
Well,
so I
the
know where to turn to.
the layout's proper enough so you just know when you flip through the book, you just know where stuff is.
Yeah, yeah, but I remember you
The
mentioning
index
that. It was like,
having an index is just wasting paper. I think there could
yeah,
be more rules put there.
that's one page to give me a table of contents so I know what page do I
Now,
need to go to look at combat.
now the part of class that I don't like is when the class tells you what you can and cannot do. That's why I ask, is class race in your game? Because certain races probably can't do certain magics.
Well, yeah, or they can only go up a certain level in with certain classes or whatever. Yes.
Yeah, or
Um,
they get certain intelligence or a certain charisma or a
yes, they
certain
have
strength or
they'll have modifiers based on racial, modifiers to attributes based on race. So they'll have some innate abilities, some have infravision, others,
yeah.
walk
But
slower,
see,
because they're
I
shorter.
like I like Planet of the Apes because humans and apes can use a rifle the same, pretty much. They even dress the same.
I guess so, yeah.
Less costuming mistakes. But I like games where if it's skill based, then pretty much anyone can do whatever skills they happen to be trained in. Now, if the weapon is built specifically for an alien race, then you have a problem because then the human can't use the weapon or can't figure out where the trigger is, or maybe it's a psionic weapon. It only works if you have psionics,
Yeah,
something like
actually,
that.
the Star Frontiers did that with all of their different race. Well, I mean, they didn't have that many different races, but they all had they all had opposable thumbs. They all had the ability to shoot a pistol if they needed to, and
Yeah.
that was the one thing they all had the same kind of anatomical features like hands, with opposable thumbs, and they can. They were able to do, although Dralocite, which were like the blob things, they could still operate triggers just by creating a finger in order to do that
Yeah.
kind of thing anyway. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, I mean, that's all you really need is a reasonable explanation of why they can function basically the same way. Um, so
And for combat, I want combat to be unified. So the rules are all kind of similar, no matter what kind of thing you're doing. Instead of this, oh, this magic spell is for this, and you have to wait certain rounds for this to happen, or it does damage for this many rounds, and da da da. And then you're kind of stuck in that combat round when you start
yeah,
using some of these spells. I would rather just make that cinematic and just say, me as the person running the game, I'll decide when that fire you lit goes out on its own.
all right.
Because you might not even be in that same room
Mhm.
anymore. So who cares if the room's burning down or not burning down behind you? Because in my games, typically, you're not going back the way you came. You're always going forward. Because everywhere you go, there's massive explosions and stuff. What kind of device is that?
That was my. I was just checking my camera. My wife just got home, so so I had the camera on the garage, so I wanted to see who was
Oh,
pulling up.
oh wow, high tech.
So yeah, it's well, recently we had there was a
You don't have,
burglary at
you don't have to say.
yeah. Yeah,
Don't
so
dox yourself.
yeah, no, I'm just saying. Recently there was a burglary at a neighbor's house, and so we were
I
like,
know where that is.
yeah, well, yes. Yes, there was a burglary in New York. You know exactly where I am now. You've triangulated. So
Is it still 40 million people, or is it down to 20 million people, or
oh, in New York? It's
yeah?
it's it's much lower than it was, yeah. New York
So
was
no Soylent Green is going to occur in your neighborhood
no,
yet?
no.
Um,
It was crazy that the person even did it because it was like in our county has one of the highest uh, gun ownership counties in New York. Per capita gun ownership in New
yeah, but
York, and
if you're not home though,
yeah,
and they know you're not home, first thing they're going to steal your guns.
yeah, but they,
That's what they're after most of the
yeah,
time.
no, this was a break in a car. That's why we got,
Oh, okay.
yeah, garage cameras.
Guns, guns, guns.
Yes.
In
All right.
California, I think you have to have the gun taken apart, then you have to have the bullets in another
Yeah.
house, and then you have to have the permit somewhere, not
Well,
in your wallet or anywhere. I don't know.
I have my permit and my guns are loaded and ready to go at all times.
Yay.
And I'm like, no,
Best
and
practice.
yep. Um, so anyway, all right.
Well, I got to get going.
Yeah, so do I actually. Like I said, my wife, and it's perfect timing almost. It's just about at the 2 hour mark. So hey, thanks for coming on and clarifying a few of those points. Now that I see that you can still roll dice and still not break your immersion, and you could still role play even though you're rolling dice. But I certainly absolutely agree that to try to streamline the dice rolls and obviously only roll dice when there's I know it's always said always only roll dice when there's a chance that they could fail, or if it would be interesting as you pointed out.
I say
um
interesting.
yeah,
Interesting
yeah,
is just means
yeah, it's a
something bad or
catch-all.
good
Yeah,
happens. It's a
yep,
fork. It's a fork.
yep.
Two possibilities. It's not the end of the world if you fail.
Hmm.
It's just going to be harder to do the thing you were wanting to do.
All right,
Ripley's trying to turn off the self-destruct mechanism, and
right.
she's too late. So
Mm,
now she has to abandon ship.
yeah.
Stuff like that.
Okay. Well, thanks a lot, Shonner, and everybody with your comments. Thanks for popping in. I know it was a very short notice kind of thing. I wasn't sure if I was going to get through it with my toothache, so hopefully I get some taken care of tomorrow. So, all right. Thanks a lot, Sean. Have a good one.
See you later.